Okay, that was exciting once again. Only because I got it in the right order. I usually don't get it in the right order. Hello, Linda Kenny Bodden.
Hello, Michael Bryant, my co-host here. We're co-hosts of Justice Served TV, and we're here as our Monday question and answer. We try to make it a uniform thing, but sometimes, our Mondays become Wednesdays, and your Wednesdays become Mondays. But we'll keep you informed on X and YouTube. If you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, you'll get a notification when we're live with questions and answers.
And
but
our
we have a lot of questions.
Our target is Mondays at 1, but the network, they get so upset when we move it around. But I live here in lower Connecticut, so let me just share something real quick before we get into the real stuff. It's been kind of, let's just say we've had a little rain. You may have heard we've had a little rain. I've got something here. Let's see. So this is beside my house, which we'll see in just a moment. This is not a creek. This is not like, a normal waterway. No. And then, so the house is a little bit up on the hill there, so thank God we're fine.
But you were ground zero. You had 13 inches of rain. Yeah. I saw bridges out, roads out.
Yeah.
Serious. It's lucky that I don't know whether there's any death toll, but if there's not, boy, you're lucky.
There were definitely some rescues, but and some houses that were destroyed, and some roads, most importantly for the whole community. There's some roads that are just, the road bed washed out, and so they just collapsed. But I don't believe anybody's been injured. So knock on wood. So anyway, so despite that, here we are, 1:00 on Monday. Unless there are locusts that come along, we're going to try and stick to Mondays at 1:00.
And next week, let me just warn you, there will be locusts coming.
There will be locusts next week. Okay. Wow, that's a bold prediction. Okay, so do you want me to just jump into what we got here? We got a weird collection.
Question, and we're going to tell you, send your questions to us. You can through YouTube. We have a lot of questions here from our last week's show.
Yeah, and this. It's funny. There's not a real case of focus right now. There's a few different things happening. So I think a lot of people just start thinking back about different cases and what's to come. And obviously we know. And by the way, here's another promo. We're just a nonstop promo. We talked with Tom Evans, who was the juror number 18 in the Lori Vallow Daybell case. And we talked with him, and that is going to launch today at 5. Okay, so we did a half-hour discussion with him. Very interesting. What he thought, what he saw. And he's been, not just because he wrote the book, but then he went to Chad Daybell's trial. And then now he's going to go to Arizona for the Lori Part 2 trial in the death of Charles Vallow. So fascinating guy. So that'll be launching at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. And we'll put a link up to it. But let me just tell you, again, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get it. But away from the promo, we asked him, he's had a lot of interviews and he wrote a book, but we asked him a couple of questions apparently that no one has asked him. So you're going to get some firsthand information about the trial that you have not heard from any other source that used or had Mr. Evans on to interview him.
Very good. Okay, so let's set the Wayback Machine and then look forward for a case about a house in Idaho that I'm sure you know about. This, I'm going to try and paraphrase. This is a very long question from Vivid Debate. Forgive me if this doesn't belong here. Oh, okay. That's her words or his words. Not sure. I've seen everywhere discussing the case, the Kohlberger case, mentioning the surviving roommate. So give us the thumbnail of the Kohlberger case, would you, while I'm parroting this down here.
Okay. So as you know, horrible case in Idaho. Occurred around November several years ago, where you had 4 people who were brutally slaughtered, students in a house. Mr. Kohlberger has been arrested, but there were 2 other people in the house, a surviving roommate that was in the same floor as where 2 of the victims were slaughtered, and then another roommate who was down below in a first floor where there was an entrance, but it kind of connected to the house kind of strangely as to the location of the dead victims here. So you have two survivors in the house, both female, one on the same floor where there was two people slaughtered, and one on the lower floor where there were no victims.
Yeah, and because of the terrain, the house backed up to it, and so that first floor was almost like a basement kind of, sort of. It wasn't the normal entry floor, which was the floor in which all 4 of the students were killed. So here was the question. Where did I put it? I know everything is being played very close, but is there anything about what happened that makes the surviving people in the house not suspects? Um, and then kind of a follow up there that it's curious and it makes me wonder what it is that cleared them so quickly. So obviously, anybody else at the scene is going to be looked at pretty closely. So, but these two folks ruled out almost immediately.
Right, right. Well, first of all, it's really brutal. The two folks were women. There was a certain amount of force that had to be used against the two victims on the floor with the one surviving victim is said to have seen Koberger. But I think they were cleared immediately because there was so much blood. And we all have that picture of the blood that's running outside the house, right? That from the two victims that were killed. And apparently, it would appear to me that the two survivors simply had no blood on them at all. And if they had been involved in a murder, I say that 4 times because that's exactly what it is in my opinion, even though there hasn't been a trial and a conviction yet, they would have had some evidence on them. And I think that cleared them immediately.
Yeah, and I think people had always wondered, well, how could that be? How could they be in the house and not hear all of this happening? Well, there's so many reasons for that. First of all, they're college kids, and with one more college kid in school, 1 year left to go. Those group housing arrangements are quite often not the public library. They're not so quiet that any little noise would attract attention. They're just that there's a lot of people coming, a lot of people going. No reason to think anything is going that everybody would hear what is happening. We also know the victims were killed in their sleep. There may have been one that had some sort of struggle, but on balance, it wasn't loud. There was no guns. It was a knife as the murder weapon. So I think people were concerned that if you didn't hear anything or claim you didn't hear anything, you must therefore be involved. And I think that's been resolved. I don't think people are concerned about that.
I don't think people are concerned about it either. And we should mention, I think, and I don't have their ages, and I wish I did, the ages of the people that were killed, because they're not the only victims. Their families are victims too. Ethan Chapin, Knodel, Mogan, and Concalves. And I don't have their ages.
19 and 20.
They're in that college age, yeah. But the amount of people that will never recover from this is huge.
Yeah, and also there was a question about they razed this house, RAZED, and there was a lot of controversy about that. What's your take on that? I understand the emotional reason for it. What do you think about the evidentiary and the judicial reason that may have said don't do this?
Well, the defense said okay. Usually, you don't do anything because the defense doesn't want it. Or, for instance, in the Parkland shooting case, they didn't consider raising the school until there was a trial because the prosecution wanted the jurors to see the horror of the slaughter that occurred there. But I was with somebody who's been covering this case and had an interesting perspective on it. This trial is going to occur next June. Yeah. And it's going to be in the college town where everybody knows. And I believe Ethan Chapin's family, I believe they still have 2 children that go to school there. And so and live across the street from the house. So the idea was to make sure that the surviving students didn't have the trauma of the house being there and were away when the trial was occurring. So when I think about it from that perspective, I say, well, that's a pretty good perspective. But if I'm the defense, I want the house there in case something crops up, and I don't know why the defense agreed to it.
No doubt, and I want the jury to feel those rooms where they are, what the relationship was with one another. I understand that technologically they've done everything they can to recreate it, whatever that means, right. 3D imaging, etc. So we'll see when it plays out in trial again, June 2nd of next year. It's finally been pushed to that date, and we'll see. I mean, that's a lot of time to get ready, but there's a lot to get ready for. So.
Well, let's face it. This is the defense is just dealing with a death penalty case. When you have a death penalty issue, that's what you try. I can't imagine that those attorneys think that their client is innocent. And I think the first thing they went back to do is try to find, the way you handle it, you try to find birth records. You see if there was any trauma in birth. You start from ground zero of even before birth. You start from, were there any problems in utero the mother had that would lead to some kind of brain brain damage or some type of brain images that cause some problems, cause thinking that was askew. So I think that that's where this case has been.
So you're already convicting the guy. You figure there's enough evidence to do that.
I've convicted him. Normally, I don't do
him.
that as a defense attorney, but I, in my mind, have convicted him. I think that alibi that I'm just out driving around looking is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, the DNA on the knife sheath that was at the scene with no other explanation, that's going to be a tough one. Okay, so again, that'll be June next year. Okay, here's just a broader question. You'll appreciate this, I think. Those people watching true crime, they're talking about a case here in which a prosecutor has a body that can't be identified. It is truly a John Doe, Jane Doe. Can the person be prosecuted for murder if they don't have the identity of the victim?
Well, sure. It's hard not to have an identity of victim these days. But yeah, you could say that somebody watched, let me just get an example. I'm with somebody and he turns out he or she is a murderer, and watch them kill a hitchhiker on the side of the road and throw the hitchhiker's body in a ditch. And then you go to the police afterwards. I don't know who that hitchhiker was. There's no identification. You've taken the identification. You've cut off the hands. You've cut off the feet. Or you have a body.
I think you've given this a lot of
yeah,
thought.
but this is what happens. Or a body washes up on shore. But it turns out that somebody says, yeah, I know who that is, and it was X who killed that person. Sure, you can be prosecuted for murder. I think there are more difficult cases, and that you don't really see that happening because with DNA identification right now, you're almost able to find out who anybody is, even if you do it through genealogical identification of the victim. We're used to genealogical identification of a suspect. You can do it through the victim too.
Yeah. I think you got that nailed. Okay, let's go way back. 1994, a little case involving OJ.
Oh, we children we were.
You know what happens is, that was, what is that, 30 years ago now? Is that right? Am I doing my math right?
Oh, my goodness.
30 years ago. There's a whole new audience who knows nothing about this guy except, didn't he just die? That kind of thing.
Right.
And of course, I'm sure they know I did the last interview with him before he died. But other than that, they're not really sure what this was all about. So people are relearning it. So quick question was, did OJ act alone? This comes from, their name was withheld by request.
Oh, wow.
Did OJ act alone? If so, how did he manage to stab both Nicole, obviously Nicole Brown Simpson, and Ron Goldman? Did he stab the two badly enough did he stab one of the two badly enough to incapacitate them and then stab the other? There's been speculation that OJ's son Jason was involved. Well, we'll set that aside because I think that was.
Yeah, but that's some interesting speculation because I know that my husband actually testified in the cases because the prosecution was saying that you could show if somebody was right-handed or left-handed or whatever from the stab wounds, and therefore it was a 6'4" very physical person that stabbed somebody from the front of the back, and he was only called to testify as a result of that testimony from the prosecution. Interesting, a little fact people don't know about. But there's been a lot of speculation about the son, Michael. I don't think you can discount
before
that.
you speculate further, just for those who may not remember, 1994, O.J. Simpson, his ex-wife was Nicole Brown Simpson. They had broken up. They had a heated, sometimes physical relationship of domestic violence. And one night after dinner, she goes home and somebody comes by and kills her. Ron Goldman happened to be waiting on her at the restaurant she was eating at and was returning, I think it was glasses, if I recall right, returning some glasses that had been left behind, and let's just say wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
And whoever killed her killed him. Now, of course, we know that OJ was acquitted. He was found liable in the civil case for wrongful death. But again, level of proof, very different. I don't know. There are still people who say he did not do it, but I'm not one of them. As I used to say, right? When I hung out in the hallways of the Las Vegas courthouse when he was getting tried for the burglary that sent him to prison, finally,
right.
He's the nicest killer I ever met. Just super nice dude, happy to chat about all kinds of stuff, especially himself.
And we interviewed the prosecutor on our show here. That actually one of our early, matter of fact, we should repost that. That convicted him in the Las Vegas trial.
That's right.
Interesting stories with regard to the prosecutor who tried him. So David Wall.
So I don't know if we answered the question or not, but I think.
God, what was the question?
Well, the question was, did he act alone, and if so, he killed somebody, incapacitated? I think it was killed her first. Goldman came upon the scene and then took care of him. But that's just my
which is
theory.
different than other people. Other people have said, and I think the prosecution at trial said it was Goldman first and
Yeah,
then
and
her,
then like
but
he
it
was in the
makes more
way,
sense.
and he had to take
Right.
him out before. I don't
Makes
know
more
why
sense
the
the
other
other
isn't
way.
just as possible. That
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
confronts her and Goldman comes on. Do do do
Well,
do. Oh
the
my
only
God!
question is whether or not she had somebody in a getaway car, really. And there was only one shoe print, right? That was found on the corner of an envelope where the glasses were that were being returned,
Was
and
that the
that was
Bruno Maltby shoe
it
print?
wasn't identified at that point.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think. I don't think that they could tell at that one just from that, but there was a piece of it, and I don't remember. Do you remember where the Molly shoe print came from?
I thought it was in the foyer area there, but I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. So you see, our memories
It's been
have
30
gone with
years.
regard to it. But you can Google the answers to those questions. And did he act alone?
I
Interesting
thought they're
question.
supposed to
It's
just
not Al.
ask
I don't
us.
think it's Al
What do
Cowlings. No,
they
I
don't need
think people
Google?
people said Al Cowlings. He remember
Oh yeah.
there's a high speed chase, high speed on the Los Angeles freeway. It was like 15 miles an
Yeah, a
hour.
low
That was
speed
high speed.
chase.
Because you can't really have, if anyone's been out there, there's no high speed chasing anywhere there. But
No.
there was a monitoring chase, and his friend Al Cowlings was driving a white Bronco that became like a cult thing. Somebody bought it, I think, to sell it later on. And the question was whether or not his friend Al Cowlings was involved. I don't think anyone had any evidence that he was ever involved with anything. That he was just taking his friend around.
He was just a kind of a good guy friend. So
Called him, picked me up at my house, and picked him up at his house, and then it became a high speed chase because there was a warrant out for him. High speed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. High speed. Okay. What else we got here? Let's talk about a quick question about the Tellis case, the Robert Tellis case, underway now in Las Vegas. Speaking of Las Vegas,
keeping Las Vegas in the news here.
Okay, so this is deep dive duty. Okay, DUTY, deep dive duty. Just started watching opening statements in the case. It started last week. Notably, the prosecutor included film of a media interview with the defendant in the opening statement. Okay, so that was the observation. The real question though was, would love to see Karen Reed's TV interviews in trial number 2. Thoughts on if this could happen? So it's basically a question, I think, two things of demonstrative versus evidence and the ability to bring what is likely to be some sort of hearsay into the case in some form. Thoughts?
Well, interesting issue because, I started practicing in New Jersey. That's my main focus of practice for years. And New Jersey had a journalist privilege law. So if you did a media interview, you couldn't even go on the stand. You couldn't on the stand say what it was. All you could do was bring the custodian of records of the newspaper at that point, not the TV station, the newspaper, and say, is this a true and accurate copy of what you ran on, the X day of X? You weren't allowed to bring the reporter in you have to say it, and you weren't allowed to use part of the admissions. If there are admissions against it, because it was considered totally, absolutely privileged, even though it was published, right? For everyone to read it. So that's where I come from. I always am surprised when I see media interviews. When I see media interviews, which aren't under oath and in opening statements, because many states, and including federal court, you can't do that until something's in evidence, and there's a hearsay issue, isn't there?
Yeah. So the question, as I understand it, I did a little research on the Karen Reed situation. They tried to get she spoke a lot. She was on a lot of different programs, and they tried to get those in the Massachusetts court, and they were denied. So we'll see if maybe they had some technical flaw that prevented them. We'll see if in round 2 they actually get to use that stuff, because most
hearsay
cases,
and privilege. That's the issue.
But there's always exceptions if you work hard around it. Bring an expert in and say he or she relied on that interview to form an opinion about whatever it was. That's always my escape hatch. If I have something I know I can't get in under normal routine, bringing an expert in, because if they relied on it, it's coming in. Okay.
It's an exception. By the way, just so you know, there's exceptions to the hearsay rule, and one of them is that experts can rely on hearsay to form an opinion. And that's what Michael's talking about.
Very good. Let's see. What else we got? Oh, this is interesting. This is a throwback, and there are some updates on it. It says where TF is Madeleine McCann, but I'll just say, where the heck is Madeleine McCann?
Wow.
For those who
I'm
don't
let you take
know
that. I'm going to take
Madeleine
you
McCann,
answer.
this was a 3-year-old little girl. This is one of the most fascinating missing person, is what it is at this point, a missing person case ever. And Netflix did a big series on it. So this British family goes to the small town in the Algarve, the southern part of Portugal, vacationing, hanging out. They go to dinner relatively near the place they're renting, and they leave 3-year-old Madeleine home. Sliding door, regular door, sliding door is unlocked. They're eating dinner. They can kind of see the building from where they're eating. It's maybe 150 yards, but they can't see all the entrances. And anyway, they get home. Madeleine's gone. 17 years ago. She has never been found. The latest wrinkle in this case, I did some research on it. In fact, Justice Served went to Portugal to follow this case and try to kind of find out where we are with this. Is a lot of questions about what the Portuguese police did or didn't do, and now what Scotland Yard is doing or not doing. Scotland Yard, after 17 years, has just budgeted another £190,000 for the investigation. And yet, there is an alleged suspect in prison in Berlin, Germany, that was arrested and convicted on rape charges in that same area, and that is believed to have some connection to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Some believe she was sold off into a kind of a sex trafficking, human trafficking world. And again,
and I want to mention one thing. The parents were accused by the Portugal police of being like the killers, okay? And this is a family, the mother is a doctor. They tried for years to get help so they could have a child and all. It was just so incompetent. And it's that incompetence, in my opinion, that leads us to where we are now. Now, maybe you can't go, Justice Serve can't go back to Portugal after that comment by me. But that's how we should throw that in there, because
yeah,
it's a
and it
very
was 2007 that they targeted the parents, primarily the mom,
right,
Kate, and in 2008 she was on the verge of being arrested, and at that point they seem to have dropped the investigation against the parents. So that's the latest. That's to answer this question specifically. Where the heck is Madeleine McCann? Nobody knows. We don't know, but we're definitely trying to get to the bottom of where they are in the investigation. If they have this guy in this German prison and they believe he has connections to her disappearance, that's where the money should be going. They've just allotted this £190,000, which is roughly 200 grand, give or take. Let's see it well spent and press this guy or get the Portuguese government has basically backed off, almost like, we did our thing, as bad as it was, and now it just sits. And so it's a lot of frustration for the family, obviously. But it really was a worldwide missing persons case. If you haven't seen the Netflix program, check it out.
But we're going to have a program on Justice.
Yeah, we're going to do
because
a story.
Michael Bryan actually went there on this case. So we will let you know when that happens.
Yeah, I was at the restaurant looking back at the building, get a sense of what they were seeing or not seeing.
And I'm going to tell people, if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get notifications specifically when that airs. We're still working on it because it's such an important case. And right now we're trying to interview certain people in England. After I'll be going to London in November, and we'll add to that.
That would be great. Yes. Okay. So I think what time we got? We got a couple minutes left. I thought there was one more.
We also sing for you here, Justice Sir. We can do everything.
There was one more in here. What happened to it? Where did it go? Oh, this is really not a true crime question, but I'm okay with that. Are you okay with a non-true crime question?
I am okay with a non-true crime question.
Okay.
I'm okay with any question.
I usually suggest to folks, the law is in your life every day, whether you know it or not. You don't have to be a criminal to have to deal with the law every day. It's there every day, and I'm not talking even about little speeding tickets. I'm talking everywhere. So this is a person who has a problem. They're signing a lease, and it says as is, and they want to know, what am I in for if I accept this property as is? I've looked at it. There's like some screens on the windows are damaged, and it needs a little maintenance here and there. What am I in for if I sign this lease saying as is? So here's my. By the way,
I'm sending this one over to you because you are our
legal
expert.
edge for homeowners,
right,
buyers,
there
and
you
renters.
Go.
That's problems with landlords and tenants. The number one problem outside the criminal world, and so this is very normal. So what you got to ask yourself is, how badly do you want this place? If you're one of 15 people lined up, it's right for you. It's the right place, the right price. who cares if the screens have a little damage? Maybe you'll even fix them yourself at some time. But if it's a major issue, no, you don't want to sign off on that. As is, which in some jurisdictions is going to be illegal. You can't, a landlord
Right.
can't just wash their
Right.
hands
Right.
and say, oh, the toilet backs up. Too bad, you said as is. No, it
You have
has to
no
be.
heat. You have no heat. You have
You
no
have no heat,
water.
Ed. You said as is. No, it has to be habitable, and that means the basics. Water, toilets, electricity. So there's a limit. Yes, you can accept certain things depending on how sold you are on a given property, but you can't let a landlord off the hook entirely just because they put as is in the lease. So there you go. That's one of life's real
Yeah.
world problems.
I have actually a question for you, and it's on a lease issue. Assume you have somebody who is going to sign a lease who's been assigned to a military base. Do you have, and they know it, they know that you're going as a couple who is in the Air Force. Do you have to put in a lease that if you get transferred, that the lease is null and void, that you don't have to pay anything other, you don't have to give notice, because in the military you can get like a day notice, you're
Of
out of
course.
here.
Yeah,
Oh,
you definitely want to negotiate that. The landlord has every right to say, and it wouldn't be discriminatory if they said, "Look, I'm looking for a 1 year tenant. You're telling me you're basically a 3 month tenant with who knows what happens after the fact." I don't have to accept that, but you could negotiate a deal where it's like, instead of, normally, if you leave a lease early, you are only responsible for the period of time that it's vacant. Okay, so you can have a landlord say, "Hey, you got 9 months left on your lease. You owe me for 9 months." Well, no, because the landlord has a duty to relet that place, and the moment it's relet, your damages stop. So in this case, I would just say, look, we're going to get 30 days notice that we're moving. So we want our damages cut off at 30 days. You may get somebody to rent it immediately after we leave, and then our damages are zero. But at least you've limited, what the downside is by saying put a cap on that. But you got to negotiate it, because there ain't no normal lease that's going to include that kind of language.
yeah, and you know what? If you're a good landlord, you should accept that negotiation right away. Because if
Of
you have
course,
members of our military
of
taking your
course.
property, renting your property, giving up their lives, their everything, their time, putting everything on hold to defend you and I, hey, accept
Yeah,
it.
and hopefully landlords, the mom and pop landlords are disappearing. BlackRock is buying everything and becoming the landlords, so it's less, warm and fuzzy. Sometimes it's just corporate, but you gotta stand up for yourself and get the deal that works for you, or you got to move along.
Okay.
Okay, I think we've done all the damage we can do.
All right.
So
Well, we are justice
reminders.
served.
Yes, we are just served. What else? Reminders. Oh, we'll have the Tom Evans interview, the Lori
5 o'clock.
juror, coming out at 5 today, and yeah,
And subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and then you'll get direct notification. You won't have to rely on going to our X page, which is Justice Served TV, or my page. We have Instagram, we have Facebook. But if you subscribe to YouTube, directly coming to you. And we love the questions. Keep the questions coming, because next week, and we'll give you a time next week, because it won't be Monday at 1. I can tell you right now, there's going to be a little problem with that. Maybe
okay.
later, or maybe Wednesday at 3. We'll let you know. And your questions will be answered directly by us.
Bye bye now.